It was an ordinary afternoon in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The sun was beginning its slow descent, casting a warm orange glow over the streets as people finished up their day and prepared for the evening. Among them was a single father, juggling the responsibilities of his small world, his home, his job, and his young daughter. He had been doing this on his own for a while now, ever since his wife had passed away unexpectedly. Life had become a series of routines, each day blending into the next. But even in the midst of the chaos, he managed to find moments of peace. That afternoon, he was doing what he did every day, picking up his daughter from school. She was 7 years old, bright and full of energy, and her smile always made his heart feel lighter. As he stood waiting outside the school gates, he thought about the evening ahead. Homework, dinner, maybe a movie. Simple things. Yet in that moment, something unusual caught his eye. Sitting on a bench just across the street from the school was a young woman, no older than 20. She seemed out of place in this neighborhood, disheveled, with a tired expression that spoke of exhaustion. She was holding a baby in her arms, cradling the infant gently but with an air of unease. The baby, no more than 6 months old, was asleep, its tiny face peaceful despite the surroundings. The woman's eyes were hollow, as if she had lost something. Hope, perhaps, or the will to keep going. The man glanced at her, unsure if she needed help, or if she was simply waiting for someone. But when their eyes met, she quickly looked away, her face flushing with what seemed like embarrassment. She shifted uncomfortably, looking down at the baby in her arms. Something in her gaze made the man pause. She seemed like she was on the edge of breaking down. He couldn't ignore it. There was something about the woman's posture, the way she clutched the baby, that made him feel like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. He took a step forward and then another until he was standing in front of her. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. Finally he spoke. "Are you okay?" His voice was gentle, laced with concern. The woman looked up at him, her eyes wide as though she hadn't expected anyone to approach her. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. After a long pause, she finally managed to say, I can't take care of her anymore." The words hit him like a cold wave, and for a moment he didn't know how to respond. He glanced down at the baby, whose small hands were curled up in tiny fists. The baby looked peaceful, but the situation was far from it. He could sense that something wasn't right. "I'm sorry," he said after a moment, kneeling down to get a better look at the infant. "Are you all right?" "What do you mean you can't take care of her?" The woman's face crumpled, and for a brief second he thought she might break into tears. Instead, she took a shaky breath and said, I'm homeless. I have nowhere to go. No family to help me. I tried to do everything I could, but I can't. I can't keep her. Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please take her. She deserves more than what I can give." The words hung in the air, and the man found himself unable to respond. He could feel his heart racing as he processed what she had just said. The idea of a mother offering her child to a complete stranger was something he had never encountered before. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. What do you mean by take her?" He couldn't understand. Was she really asking him to take her baby? The woman's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. Instead, she gently shifted the baby in her arms, as if offering her up to him without saying another word. The baby, still asleep, had no idea what was happening. But the woman's desperation was clear. She was giving up. "I can't," she said, her voice cracking. "I just can't do this anymore." The man was overwhelmed with emotion, his mind spinning. He was a single parent, and raising his own daughter had already been a challenge. How could he possibly take on another child, especially one so young? He wasn't prepared for this. But as he stood there looking at the woman and the baby, something inside him shifted. There was a deep, unspoken connection, an overwhelming sense of compassion that pushed him to act. The situation felt wrong, yet in some strange way it also felt like the right thing to do. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. The woman shook her head, looking defeated. "I don't know," she said softly. "I don't have anywhere to go. I don't know how I'm going to survive." The man felt a pang of guilt in his chest. He knew he couldn't walk away from this, but he also knew he couldn't just take the baby without understanding more about the situation. He needed to know more, to understand what had brought this young woman to the point of giving up her child. "I don't know what to do," he said, his voice strained. But I can't just take her without knowing more. Let me help you. Let me find you somewhere safe to go. You don't have to do this alone. The woman shook her head again, her lips trembling. I don't have time. Please just take her. I know you can give her a better life than I can. The man was torn. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. His instincts told him to help, to take the child and give her a chance at life. But at the same time, his rational mind screamed that he wasn't prepared for such a drastic change. He had enough on his plate already. Raising his daughter was hard enough, and now this? It seemed impossible. But then, as he looked at the baby again, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had to do something. He couldn't just walk away and leave this child to a fate that was too cruel to even imagine. The woman's plea echoed in his mind. She deserves more than I can give. His heart weighed heavy as he considered the woman's words. Could he really do this? Could he take on this responsibility? He didn't know. But one thing was clear. He couldn't leave her out here alone, struggling with a baby in her arms. Something had to change. I'll help you, he said, the words leaving his mouth before he had fully thought them through. I'll help both of you. The decision to take the baby had been made quickly, almost instinctively, but the reality of it began to settle in as soon as he got home that evening. The single dad sat quietly at the kitchen table, his mind racing with the consequences of what had just happened. His daughter had already gone to bed, and the house was still and quiet, except for the sound of his own thoughts. He had agreed to help, but what did that mean exactly? What was he supposed to do now? He wasn't prepared for this, wasn't equipped for this level of responsibility. He had always imagined raising his daughter alone, but a second child, especially one so young, felt like an overwhelming task. He could barely keep up with his own life, let alone take on a new life to care for. As he sat there, lost in thought, he heard a soft knock on the door. His heart skipped a beat, and for a second he wondered if this was some mistake. Maybe the woman had changed her mind. But when he opened the door, he was met with the sight of the same young woman from earlier, standing nervously on his porch. The baby, now awake, was cradled in her arms. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I don't know where else to go. I just needed to make sure. Are you sure about this? I mean, I don't want to put you in a position you're not ready for. He felt a wave of sympathy wash over him. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her too. She was scared, and it was clear she didn't trust anyone anymore, not even herself. She had given up her child in a moment of desperation, and now she was second-guessing her choice. I'm sure, he said, trying to reassure her. I told you earlier, I'll help you both. I'm not going to leave you out here like this. The woman nodded slowly, her eyes not meeting his. She shifted uncomfortably on the doorstep as if unsure of what to say next. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'm so scared. I don't know what's going to happen to her. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I've been trying to keep it together, but I can't anymore. His heart broke for her. She wasn't just abandoning her baby. She was in a place where she felt she had no other choice. She had tried to survive on her own, but the weight of it all had become too much. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the toll it had taken on her. No one should have to go through that. I know you're scared, he said gently, but right now the best thing for both of you is to take a step back and let me help. Let's just take it one step at a time, all right? She nodded, her face still shadowed with doubt. Slowly, she handed him the baby, her hands trembling as she did so. For a moment, it was like the world stood still. He could feel the weight of the baby in his arms and the weight of the responsibility that came with it. The baby's small body was warm and fragile, and it stirred slightly in his arms, looking up at him with wide, trusting eyes. The young woman stood there, watching him carefully as if waiting for some sign that she had made the right choice. I'll take good care of her, he promised. I'll make sure she's okay, but you need to take care of yourself too. She gave a weak smile, the first real one he'd seen from her all day. I don't even know where to start, she said, shaking her head. I don't have anyone, no family, no friends. I've been on my own for so long I don't know how to get back on my feet. The dad could understand the pain in her voice. He knew what it was like to feel lost, to be alone. He had been through his own struggles, though they were different. He didn't have the answers, but he could offer a little bit of hope, even if it was just for today. Let's figure it out together, he said softly. We'll find a way. With that, the woman slowly turned and walked away, leaving him with the baby in his arms. As the door closed behind him, he stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision settle on his shoulders. He hadn't expected any of this to happen. One minute he was just trying to live his life, and the next he had a baby in his home. And not just any baby. This was a baby who had been abandoned by the one person who was supposed to love her the most. He looked down at the little girl in his arms, her eyes still wide and curious, her tiny fingers wrapped around his finger. He had never thought about adopting a child, let alone someone else's child. But here he was, faced with a reality he hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore. He could feel the pull of responsibility, but also a deep sense of tenderness for the little life in his arms. Over the next few days, the dad did what he could to settle the baby into his home. He had no idea what to do for a baby this young. He wasn't exactly a pediatric expert, but he figured the basics out. How to change diapers, how to feed her, how to comfort her when she cried. It wasn't easy. There were nights he stayed up late, rocking her gently in his arms, trying to get her to sleep. There were days when he had to juggle work and his daughter's needs along with the baby's. He was exhausted, but he didn't complain. In the back of his mind, he knew he couldn't keep living like this. He wasn't equipped for raising 2 children, not alone, but for now this was his reality. He wasn't going to let the baby go back to the life she'd had, a life full of uncertainty. He would find a way to make this work, even if it meant changing everything about his life. His daughter, though initially uncertain about the sudden addition to the family, slowly warmed up to the baby. She wasn't used to sharing her father's attention, but she could see how much he cared for the child. Every time she saw him gently rocking the baby or talking to her in soft tones, she began to understand. They were a family now, however untraditional that family might be. One evening, after he had put both children to bed, the dad sat alone in the quiet house, staring at the baby's crib. The room was still except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. How long would this last? Was he really capable of taking on this responsibility? Would he be able to provide a stable future for this baby, especially with everything else going on in his life? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a knock at the door. He didn't expect anyone. When he opened it, he was surprised to find the young woman standing there again, looking just as lost as before. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice shaky. "I don't know where else to go. I needed to check on her." The dad's heart ached. She wasn't asking to take the baby back. She just wanted to make sure she was okay. It was clear she still loved her child despite everything. "She's doing well," he assured her. "She's safe." The woman nodded, though the uncertainty in her eyes didn't disappear. She wasn't ready to let go, and he could see that. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to get my life together." He didn't have all the answers, but he knew that for now, the only thing he could do was offer her a little peace of mind. "Take it one day at a time," he said softly. "I'll keep helping. I don't have all the solutions, but I'll be here for you." She gave a small nod, but he could see the tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for everything." As she left, he watched her go, unsure of what the future would hold. The baby was still sleeping peacefully in her crib, and his daughter was tucked into her bed. For now, that was enough. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the single dad began to find a new rhythm. The baby was still young, but with each passing day she seemed to grow stronger, more alert, and more attached to him. Her small hands reached for him in the mornings, and she began to recognize his voice, her face lighting up whenever he spoke her name. It wasn't easy. Nothing about this situation was, but he couldn't deny that a bond was forming, one that was deeper than he could have imagined. The days were long. He found himself staying up late, feeding the baby in the quiet hours of the night while trying to keep his thoughts together. He still had his own daughter to care for, a little girl who had been through her own struggles but was slowly adjusting to the new family dynamic. It was a lot, more than he had ever expected to handle, but he kept pushing through. The young woman who had given him the baby came by occasionally, always asking if everything was okay, checking on her daughter. Each time she came, the dad could see the mix of emotions in her eyes, guilt, fear, but also a sense of relief. She wasn't ready to take her baby back, not yet, but she couldn't stop worrying. Every time she saw the baby, she seemed to struggle with the idea of leaving her in his care, but he could tell she also recognized that the child was better off with him, at least for now. One afternoon, the dad received a call from a social worker. They had heard about the situation through local outreach programs, and they wanted to make sure that everything was being handled appropriately. He knew this moment would come, but he hadn't expected it to happen so soon. The call left him feeling uneasy. There was no way he was giving up the baby, not after everything that had happened. But he also knew the process wasn't simple. The system was slow, complicated, and filled with red tape. He could only hope that things would work out in the end. The social worker, a woman named Grace, arrived a few days later. She was kind but firm, her professional demeanor giving away little about how she truly felt about the situation. She asked him all sorts of questions about the baby, about his ability to care for her, about his life and his history. He explained as best as he could. He was just doing what he thought was right. He hadn't planned on becoming a father to 2 children, but this baby needed him, and he couldn't turn her away. "I understand this wasn't something you planned for," Grace said after a long conversation, "but I need to make sure that the situation is safe for the baby. That means we'll need to go through some steps, background checks, interviews, and paperwork." The dad nodded, though he felt a pang of anxiety. He didn't want to go through a long, drawn-out process. He just wanted to make sure the baby was okay. But he knew that this was the right thing to do. He needed to make sure everything was above board. Grace left after a couple of hours, promising to keep him updated. But the whole experience left him feeling exhausted and unsure of what to expect next. In the meantime, his daughter was becoming more and more attached to the baby. She was still young, but she had a deep sense of compassion for the child, and she began to help in little ways. She'd try to rock the baby to sleep when the dad was too tired, or she'd pick out clothes for her, her small hands carefully folding the clothes and setting them out for him to dress the baby. It was clear that she was starting to see the baby as her sister, and the bond they shared, though still new, was growing stronger each day. Despite the adjustments, there were moments when he couldn't help but wonder how long this arrangement could last. Could he really raise 2 children on his own? Could he give them both the attention they needed, the love they deserved? He still didn't have all the answers, but he was trying his best. Some days he felt like he was barely holding it all together, but other days when he saw the baby's bright eyes looking up at him or heard his daughter giggling as she played with the baby, he felt a sense of peace. It was on one of those peaceful afternoons that the young woman came by again. She hadn't visited in a few days, and the dad couldn't help but feel a sense of unease whenever he thought about her. He wanted to reassure her, but he also knew that her presence made the situation even more complicated. The last time she came, she had seemed so lost, so unsure of what to do. She hadn't given him any concrete answers, just an endless stream of apologies and uncertainty. When she knocked on the door, he was sitting on the couch, watching his daughter play with the baby on the floor. He felt the same wave of uncertainty wash over him, but he pushed it aside. He opened the door, and there she was, standing on the porch, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. "Hi," she said quietly, her eyes darting to the baby in his arms. "Hey," he replied, trying to sound as calm as possible. "How have you been?" She shrugged, her gaze fixed on the baby. "I've been okay, just trying to figure things out." "I know," he said, "but I need to ask, are you ready to make a decision about what happens next?" She looked down, as if the question itself was too much to bear. She had always seemed like she was on the edge of something, on the edge of making a choice, but never quite able to take that final step. He could see it in her eyes now, the fear of making the wrong decision, of losing something she loved but knew she couldn't care for. "I don't know," she said after a long pause. "I don't know if I'm ready. I can't give her what she needs. But I don't know if I can let her go either." The dad's heart ached for her. He could hear the pain in her voice, the guilt and fear that still held her in its grip. It wasn't just about the baby anymore, it was about her too. She had made the hardest decision of her life, but she wasn't ready to let go. "I understand," he said softly. "But I'm here to help. You don't have to do this alone. If you need time, that's okay. But I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure this out together." She nodded, wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The dad could see the relief in her face, but it was mixed with sorrow. It wasn't the ending either of them had imagined, but it was the only one they could offer each other right now. Before she left, she reached out to touch the baby's hand. The baby, who had been sleeping peacefully in the dad's arms, stirred and opened her eyes. The young woman's face softened as she looked down at her daughter. For a moment there was no doubt in her eyes, only love. Then, without a word, she turned and left, leaving the dad with more questions than answers. As the door closed behind her, the dad stood there for a moment thinking about everything that had happened in such a short amount of time. His life had been turned upside down, and yet, in the midst of the uncertainty and chaos, he couldn't deny the feeling that things were slowly falling into place. There was still so much to figure out, but for now, he had 2 children to care for, and that was a responsibility he was willing to take on, no matter how difficult it would be. The weeks that followed were a blur. The single dad found himself in a constant state of motion, waking up early to get his daughter ready for school, working through the day, and coming home to care for the baby. Every day, it felt like he was learning something new, figuring out how to balance the responsibilities of 2 children while keeping his own life on track. It was exhausting, but in some strange way it was also fulfilling. The baby, now a little older, was growing more curious about the world around her. She started to giggle at simple things, at her father's voice, at her sister's playful antics, at the way sunlight streamed through the window in the mornings. Her presence filled the house with a lightness that had been missing for a long time. It was as if, in some way, she had healed a part of him that he hadn't even realized was broken. His daughter, too, was adjusting. At first, she had been unsure about the sudden change in their family dynamic. She had always been the center of his world, and now with the baby around, she had to share his attention. But she was a good kid, and over time she began to develop her own bond with the baby. She would sit by the crib, talking to her softly, or try to make her laugh by doing silly dances. It wasn't always easy for her. She missed having her father's undivided attention, but she seemed to understand that this was part of their new life. Still, there were moments of doubt. The dad found himself questioning whether he was really capable of this. Could he raise 2 children on his own? Would he ever be able to provide them with the stability they needed? There were nights when he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he had made the right choice. The weight of responsibility sometimes felt unbearable, but he couldn't turn back now. One evening, after putting both children to bed, he sat in the living room staring out the window. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. He thought back to the day the baby's mother had offered her up to him, the sense of confusion and uncertainty he had felt. He had no idea what was coming, no idea how much his life would change. But now, with the baby asleep in the next room and his daughter tucked into her bed, he felt a deep sense of responsibility. He was their father now, in every sense of the word. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone, and his heart skipped a beat. He had been living in a state of quiet anticipation, wondering when the next step in this strange journey would come. When he opened the door, he was surprised to see the young woman standing there again. She looked different this time, less anxious but still uncertain. "Hi," she said quietly, her voice hesitant. "Hey," he replied, trying to hide the surprise in his voice. "I wasn't expecting you." "I know," she said, her eyes darting down to the ground. "I've been thinking a lot about everything about her." The dad felt a wave of compassion for her. He knew that this wasn't easy for her. Giving up a child, even temporarily, was a decision no one should have to make. And yet, she had. He could see that it was eating away at her, but he also saw a glimmer of relief in her eyes. Maybe she had finally come to terms with the fact that she wasn't able to give her baby the life she deserved, at least not right now. "Come in," he said, stepping aside to let her in. "I know you've been struggling with this, but she's safe here. She's doing well." The woman nodded, stepping inside hesitantly. She looked around the living room, her gaze lingering on the pictures of his daughter on the walls. She hadn't seen them together before, hadn't seen what their life looked like now. She could feel the warmth in the house, the love that had been built between him and his daughter, and now between them and the baby. "How is she?" she asked softly, looking toward the hallway where the baby's crib stood. "She's good," he said, his voice softening. "She's growing, learning new things every day. She's a tough little one." The woman smiled faintly, though there was sadness behind her eyes. "I'm glad," she whispered. "I've been thinking a lot about what I'm doing, about whether I made the right choice. I never wanted to hurt her, but I don't think I was strong enough to give her the life she deserves." He could see that the guilt was still heavy on her. It weighed on her every word, every gesture. He wanted to reach out and tell her that she wasn't a failure, that sometimes life gave us choices we weren't prepared for. But he knew the pain she was feeling wasn't something words could fix. "You did what you thought was best," he said, his voice calm. "You loved her enough to know that she needed more than you could give her right now. That's a hard decision, but it doesn't make you a bad person." She bit her lip, her eyes welling with tears. "I don't know how to live with that," she whispered. "Every time I see her, every time I think about her, I wonder if I'll ever be able to forgive myself." He sighed, stepping closer to her. He had seen this kind of pain before, though not in this form. Guilt, regret, self-doubt. These were things he had carried with him for years after the loss of his wife. It wasn't the same, but it was close. "It's going to take time," he said gently. "And maybe you won't have all the answers right now. But I promise you, she's in a good place. She's loved, she's safe. And when you're ready, when you feel like you're in a better place, maybe we can figure out what's next. But for now, you need to take care of yourself too." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now," she said, her voice small. "I don't even know where to start." "Start by taking care of yourself," he said softly. "You've been through a lot. You can't help anyone if you're not okay yourself." She looked at him, a mix of gratitude and sadness in her expression. "I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm a terrible person for doing this, for leaving her." "You're not a terrible person," he replied. "You made a difficult choice because you care about her. That's what matters." For a moment there was silence between them. The weight of their shared understanding seemed to fill the room. The woman's tears had stopped, though there was still a sadness in her eyes. She wasn't ready to take the baby back, not yet. But she was beginning to accept that the decision she had made wasn't a reflection of her love, but rather an act of love itself. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for taking care of her. I don't know how to express how much that means." He smiled faintly, though the sadness in his own heart mirrored hers. "You don't have to thank me. I'm doing what I can." As she left, he stood in the doorway watching her walk away. The conversation had been difficult, but there was a sense of peace between them now. It wasn't an easy fix, and it wasn't a perfect solution, but it was progress. She had come to terms with her decision, and he had made it clear that he wasn't going anywhere. The baby would always be safe with him, but her mother, whether or not she was ready to admit it, would always be part of the equation. Closing the door, he turned back to the house, the sound of his daughter's laughter drifting from the other room. His family, though unconventional, had grown, and despite the challenges that still lay ahead, he couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose. They were all in this together, each of them playing their part in a story that was still being written. Months passed, and the single dad's life continued to evolve in ways he had never imagined. The baby, who had once seemed so fragile and distant, was now an integral part of his life. She had grown into a curious, lively child, always reaching for new things, always discovering the world around her. Her laugh had become a familiar sound in the house, and her presence brought a warmth that made everything seem brighter. His daughter, too, had adapted to the changes. The two girls now played together, their laughter echoing through the house as they ran around, building forts or playing make-believe. It wasn't always perfect. There were moments of jealousy, of frustration, but the bond they shared was growing stronger every day. The dad often found himself watching them, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. He had done this. He had opened his heart to a second child, one who had been offered to him in a moment of desperation, and he had made it work. It hadn't been easy, but he had done it. They were a family now. Though life had settled into a new routine, there were still moments of uncertainty. The young woman who had given him the baby had not returned in several months. He hadn't heard from her, and he had no idea where she was or what she was doing. He worried about her sometimes. Was she okay? Was she still struggling? Or had she found a way to rebuild her life? One evening, as he was sitting on the couch after putting the kids to bed, he heard a knock at the door. His heart skipped a beat. He wasn't expecting anyone, and it had been a long time since the young woman had come by. His mind raced. What could this mean? When he opened the door, he was surprised to see her standing there. Her face gaunt, her eyes tired, but there was something different about her. She wasn't the same person who had left her baby on his doorstep months ago. This time there was a quiet strength in her demeanor, though she still seemed unsure of herself. She hadn't come for the baby, but it was clear that she had come for something. "Hi," she said softly, her voice a little unsteady. I've been trying to figure things out. I know it's been a long time, but I needed to see her. I needed to see if she's okay." He stepped aside, letting her in. "Of course. She's doing well. Come on in." As she walked through the door, her eyes scanned the room, taking in the pictures on the walls, the small, cozy home that had become their sanctuary. She looked at the baby's crib, now full of toys and blankets, and he could see the quiet sadness in her expression. "She's grown so much," the young woman said, her voice tinged with awe. "I can't believe how different she looks." "I've missed so much," the dad nodded. "She's a little firecracker. She's been growing and learning so much. She's a lot of fun." They stood there for a moment, the weight of unspoken words filling the space between them. The dad wasn't sure what to say. He wasn't angry with her. How could he be? He knew she had made her choice out of desperation, not out of malice. But there was still a part of him that felt uneasy. This was her child, after all. How would she feel seeing her daughter thriving in a life she had stepped away from? "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. "I never meant to leave her, you know. But I just didn't have any other choice. I didn't think I could take care of her, and I didn't want to hurt her by staying, knowing I wasn't able to provide what she needed." The dad sighed, feeling a pang of sympathy for her. He had heard these words before, but now they carried more weight. She wasn't just a young woman who had made a difficult decision. She was a mother who had felt completely lost, who had thought she had no other options but to walk away from her child. It was clear that this decision had haunted her, but she had done what she thought was best at the time. "You didn't hurt her," he said softly. "You gave her a chance at something better." "That's not easy. It wasn't easy for you, and it wasn't easy for me either. But I can't imagine what you must have been going through." She wiped her eyes, a tear escaping down her cheek. "I've been trying to figure out what to do with my life. I'm still not where I want to be. I don't know if I ever will be, but I needed to see her to know that she's happy, that she's safe." "She's happy," he reassured her. "She's loved. She's part of this family now." The woman's gaze dropped to the floor, and he could see the conflict in her eyes. There was something else she wanted to say, something she was struggling to voice. "I've been thinking about taking her back," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I can't give her everything, but I think I could at least try. Maybe I could be a part of her life again." The dad took a deep breath. He hadn't been expecting this. He had known that this day might come, but that didn't make it any easier. He had opened his heart to this baby, and now he wasn't sure what to say. He wasn't sure if he was ready to let go. "You've got to do what's best for her," he said carefully, choosing his words with care. "If you feel like you're in a place where you can be a part of her life, that's something we can talk about. But right now, she's settled here. She knows us and we know her. I don't want to take her away from you," the woman said quickly, her eyes wide with fear. I just want to be a part of her life. I don't want her to grow up thinking I don't care about her." The dad could see the pain in her eyes, the longing to be a mother in the way she had always wanted to be, but also the fear of not being good enough. He understood that fear all too well. Raising a child wasn't easy, and it wasn't always straightforward. But it was also about love, and he knew that she loved her daughter, even if she hadn't been able to care for her the way she had wanted. "She knows you love her," he said gently, "and you can be part of her life if that's what you want. But we need to take things slowly. She's been through a lot, and so have you. There's no rush. We can figure it out one step at a time. The woman nodded, wiping her eyes once again. She seemed to relax just a little. She wasn't ready to take her baby back, but she was starting to accept that maybe she didn't have to. Maybe being in her daughter's life was enough for now. I don't know how to thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know what would have happened to her if you hadn't stepped in. You've given her a life I couldn't give her. You don't have to thank me, the dad said, his voice steady. I'm just doing what felt right. They stood there for a moment, neither of them sure what to say next. The young woman took a deep breath and then looked up at him, her eyes filled with a quiet sense of relief. I'm going to keep working on myself, she said, more confidently now. I'm going to find a way to get better. And when I'm ready, I'll be here. I'll be part of her life in whatever way she needs me. I'll be here too, the dad replied, offering a small smile. We'll take it one step at a time. As she left that evening, the dad stood at the door for a while, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, of fear, but in the end he had made the right choice. His life had been changed in ways he hadn't expected, but he had no regrets. The baby had found a home with him, and now the young woman was finding her way back into her daughter's life. One small step at a time. And for the first time in a long while, he felt that maybe, just maybe, everything would work out. It had been almost a year since the day the baby had been placed in his arms, and in that time, life had changed in ways the single dad could never have imagined. The family had grown, not just in size, but in love and understanding, and in the ways they navigated life together. Every day felt like a new chapter, each one different but full of moments that brought them closer. The baby had turned 1, and she was no longer the tiny, helpless child he had first taken in. She was walking now, her small steps wobbly but determined. Her laughter was a constant presence in their home, and the joy she brought into their lives was immeasurable. His daughter had grown too, no longer just the little girl who had been uncertain about sharing her father's love. She had become a big sister in every sense of the word, proud and protective of the baby, teaching her new things and looking out for her. It wasn't always easy, and there were still moments of jealousy, moments when his daughter wanted his attention all to herself. But the bond between them was undeniable. They had become a team. The dad had learned to juggle his responsibilities, though it had taken time. There were days when he was tired, when he questioned whether he was doing enough, but there were also days when he saw the way the girls looked at him, with trust, with love, with a sense of security, and he knew that, despite the challenges, he was doing okay. He was doing his best, and that was all anyone could ask for. One evening, as he sat in the living room after the girls had gone to bed, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He remembered the fear and confusion he had felt when the baby's mother had placed her in his arms, unsure of what would come next. He had been terrified, overwhelmed. But now, looking around at the life he had built, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had done this. He had created a family out of something unexpected, and he had done it with love. It wasn't always easy. Life had its share of challenges. There had been moments when he questioned if he was doing the right thing, moments when he felt the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. But those moments were fleeting, and they were always replaced with the laughter of his daughters, the warmth of their hugs, the joy of seeing them grow. One afternoon, he was sitting on the porch, watching the girls play in the yard. His daughter had found a ball, and she was trying to teach the baby how to throw it. The baby, of course, wasn't quite ready to understand, but she giggled as she tried, her tiny hands reaching for the ball with excitement. His daughter laughed, showing her how to throw it, her voice full of encouragement. It was a simple moment, but one that filled his heart with so much joy. The doorbell rang, interrupting the peaceful moment. The dad stood up, his mind momentarily racing. Who could it be? He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened the door, he found the young woman standing there again. She looked different this time, not just in the way she held herself, but in her eyes. There was a sense of calm there, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. "Hi," she said softly, her voice no longer unsure. "I've been thinking about you all, about how things have changed. I just wanted to come by and see how everyone is doing." He smiled, a mixture of surprise and relief flooding over him. It had been a while since he had seen her. The last time they spoke, things had been uncertain. She had been on her own journey, trying to figure out what her place in her daughter's life was. He wasn't sure what had happened since then, but he could see that she had come a long way. She seemed more at peace now, more certain of who she was and what she wanted. "We're doing well," he said, stepping aside to let her in. "The girls are outside playing. They're growing so fast." She nodded, following him into the house. They went to the yard where the girls were still playing, their laughter filling the air. The baby's chubby little hands reached for the ball again, and this time, she managed to throw it, albeit with a bit of help from her sister. The young woman watched them for a moment, her eyes softening. "She's amazing," she said quietly. "I can't believe how much she's grown. I'm so glad she's in a good place." "She's thriving," the dad said with a smile. "You don't have to worry about her. She's loved. She's part of our family now." The woman looked at him, her gaze filled with gratitude and something deeper, something that seemed to come from the very heart of her. "I've been working on myself," she said, "and I've realized something. I don't need to be her full-time mother right now. I just need to be a part of her life in whatever way I can. I don't want to take her away from you or from her sister, but I want her to know I'm here. I want her to know she has another person who loves her." The dad listened carefully. This wasn't an easy thing for her to say. He could see the weight of it in her eyes, the vulnerability in her voice. She wasn't asking to take the baby back. She was asking for a place in her life, a way to stay connected, to be a part of something she had missed. "I think that's a good idea," he said, his voice steady. "She knows you love her, and I think it's important for her to have a relationship with you, in whatever way works for all of us." The woman smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I don't know how to explain how much this means to me," she said. "I've been so lost for so long, but now I feel like I'm starting to find my way. And part of that is knowing that I can be a part of her life even if it's not the way I imagined." He nodded, understanding more than he could put into words. Life didn't always go the way we planned. Sometimes things happened that changed everything, but that didn't mean they couldn't find a new way forward. He had learned that over the past year. It wasn't about perfection. It was about love, about doing the best you could with what you had. They sat down together on the porch, watching the girls continue to play. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the yard. It felt like everything was falling into place. They weren't perfect, but they were family. And that, in the end, was what mattered most. As the night grew darker and the girls came inside ready for bed, the dad stood up and walked to the door with the young woman. She smiled at him, her eyes full of gratitude. "I'll be around," she said. "I'll always be here for her. And for you too if you need me." He nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. "Thank you," he said quietly. "We'll take things one step at a time, but we'll make it work." As she left, he stood at the door for a moment, watching her walk down the path. He had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. Things had changed, yes, but they had changed for the better. His family was stronger, his heart fuller, and his life richer than it had ever been. As he closed the door and turned to the girls, ready to tuck them into bed, he knew one thing for certain. Love had brought them this far, and love would carry them through whatever came next.